New this morning, Elvis Presley's Graceland mansion is at the center of a court fight. It's a hugely popular tourist attraction, and it appears to be headed for a foreclosure auction later this week. But Elvis's granddaughter, actor Riley Keough, is fighting back with a lawsuit claiming fraud. Omar Villafranca traveled to Memphis for more.
For nearly 5 decades, one room inside Graceland remained locked, untouched, and cloaked in mystery: Elvis Presley's attic. While millions toured his mansion, no one knew what secrets lay above. Now, for the first time, the door has opened, and what was discovered inside changes everything we thought we knew about the king. From heartbreaking letters to never-before-heard recordings, private journals, and an engagement ring that could rewrite his final love story, these intimate relics reveal the man behind the myth. This isn't just about history. It's about rediscovering Elvis Presley's soul, one hidden memory at a time. A locked room for nearly 50 years, tucked above the grandeur of Graceland, was a place even the most dedicated Elvis fans never imagined. An attic sealed since 1977. While the rest of the estate became a monument to the king of rock and roll, this room remained untouched. A silent, airless capsule of memory. For nearly 5 decades, no one dared disturb it. Not the staff. Not even Lisa Marie Presley, who once confessed, "I've never been all the way through it myself." It wasn't just a room. It was grief locked in wood and insulation. The attic was sealed shortly after Elvis's death. Those closest to him couldn't bear to go through his things, to unpack the chaos of a life so large, yet so vulnerable in its final days. The door closed. Dust gathered. Time simply moved on. Then, decades later, as part of a preservation initiative to fully document the estate's historical contents, archivists were given permission to open the attic. With cameras rolling and hearts pounding, they slowly pushed open the creaking door. What they found inside stunned even the most hardened professionals. No one expected to discover a deeply personal, emotionally charged museum of Elvis's most private moments. Boxes stacked to the ceiling, tattered trunks, plastic bins scrawled with fading handwriting. Some marked simply private. It was like walking into someone's forgotten mind. A time capsule sealed not by accident, but by emotional necessity. And that was just the beginning. Priscilla's hidden memory boxes. Among the first items pulled from the shadows were several plastic storage bins labeled in Priscilla Presley's unmistakable handwriting. Lisa's firsts, and Priscilla, private. Inside lay memories so intimate, they could have brought even the strongest to tears. There were tiny baby shoes, worn and delicate, Lisa Marie's hospital ID bracelet, photographs taped to yellowing construction paper, likely from a time before fame hardened the air around them. There was even a scribbled list titled Elvis's Favorite Lullabies for Lisa, a simple document that showed just how present, how tender he once was as a father. But that wasn't all. Deeper in the boxes were folded letters, yellowed with age, still faintly perfumed, written from Priscilla to Elvis during their brief separation before the divorce. These weren't press statements or rehearsed reconciliations. They were raw, heartbroken, real. "I don't know who you are on stage anymore," one letter read, "but I remember the boy who sang to me in the dark." Those words struck like a lightning bolt. The myth of Elvis, the global icon, the stage god, the showman, was shattered by the voice of a woman who once knew him when he was just a man. These letters offered a glimpse into the human wreckage fame left behind. They painted a picture of a relationship torn between love and loneliness, These weren't museum pieces. They were emotional confessions, boxed up in silence and hidden from the world. Until now. Unreleased Elvis recordings. Just when the attic seemed to have given up its most intimate secrets, another discovery shifted the room's atmosphere from nostalgia to revelation. Tucked behind an old garment bag, inside a battered trunk lined with velvet, was a set of reel-to-reel tapes. Their labels worn, dates scribbled faintly in pencil. The team paused. This wasn't memorabilia. This was history waiting to be heard. The tapes, many dated just months before Elvis's death in 1977, are now believed to contain unreleased gospel recordings, private musical sketches, and even informal conversations caught on tape. They are raw, stripped-down moments, Elvis not as performer, but as a man trying to reconnect with his roots, perhaps seeking peace through the music that first stirred his soul. One expert described a segment where Elvis sings a gospel hymn softly, almost like a lullaby, while talking to a friend about feeling closer to God at night. The room falls quiet in the recording, only his voice and a strumming guitar carrying through. It's not performance. It's prayer with melody. Some tapes include what seem like spoken journals. Elvis talking about dreams he had, his thoughts, on fame, and occasionally, silences where you can almost feel the weight in his chest. "You can hear his soul in those silences," said one technician. The recordings are now being carefully restored in hopes of releasing them as a final posthumous album, a kind of sonic portrait of Elvis in his last searching days. It's a discovery that changes everything. Elvis wasn't fading away. He was trying to come home to himself through the one thing he still believed in: music. Lisa Marie's childhood letters to her father. The attic wasn't just filled with Elvis's memories. It held the quiet, fragile love between a father and daughter. Among the trunks, a small cedar box was found. The scent of pine still lingered, even after all these years. Inside were dozens of handwritten letters from a young Lisa Marie Presley, written in colorful crayon and folded with care. These weren't dramatic declarations. They were pure, unfiltered expressions of love, the kind only a child can give. One note simply said, "I miss you, Daddy. I love you bigger than the sky." Another featured a stick figure drawing of the two of them holding hands with hearts above their heads. Some had little XOXO symbols drawn in red marker. Then came the one that stunned everyone, a note on lined paper, dated shortly before Elvis's final days. It read, "Daddy, don't be sad. I'll always be your little girl." Those words, written in the shaky hand of a child, now echo with heartbreaking clarity. She sensed something. She knew he was hurting, and she wanted to heal him the only way she knew how, with love. These letters became the emotional heart of the attic discovery. They remind us that behind the fame, behind the fortune and fatigue, Elvis was still just a dad. A father who, like so many, kept every note, every drawing, every message like treasures. In a world that saw Elvis as larger than life, these letters made him human again, and through them, we see the tender connection that endured, even in silence. Elvis's private journals. Just when it seemed the attic had run out of surprises, a dusty leather trunk offered one last whisper from the past. A bundle of notebooks, bound with twine, pages yellowed with age. They were small, unassuming, easy to overlook, but inside them was something rare. Elvis's own handwriting, and more importantly, his unfiltered thoughts. These journals weren't written for an audience. There were no song lyrics, no business notes, just the personal reflections of a man overwhelmed by his legend. Page after page revealed a soul in turmoil. Entries filled with questions, spiritual musings, and a recurring theme of loneliness. One line read, "What's a king without peace inside his kingdom?" Another, scrawled in the margins, simply said, "I don't recognize my own voice sometimes." In one entry, dated just weeks before his final concert, he wrote about dreaming of his mother, hearing her voice in the quiet. "She told me to rest," he scribbled. "Told me to come home." The words bleed through the page, not in ink, but in pain. Elvis's journals don't just add to his myth. They shatter it. They reveal a man fighting to understand his place in the world, drowning in applause, but desperate for real connection. They show us someone aware of his faults, someone praying for forgiveness, and someone who knew, deep down, that his time might be running out. These notebooks are now being archived with the highest care, not just as artifacts, but as testimonies. Because they prove that Elvis Presley, for all his fame and glory, was still searching for something we all crave: peace of mind and peace of heart. Costumes. He refused to wear among the rhinestone glitz of Elvis's later years. It was easy to forget the boy from Tupelo who once sang with nothing but a guitar and a dream. But the attic told a different story. Tucked in garment bags behind steamer trunks were a number of costumes Elvis never wore: Vegas-style jumpsuits, ornate capes, and embellished outfits that had been custom designed for tours that never happened. These weren't just outfits left behind. They were symbols of a man at war with his image. One suit, silver and sapphire with intricate beadwork, had a handwritten note pinned to it: "Too heavy. Not me never." Another had simply been marked "Cancelled." The fabrics, still vibrant, were weighed down not by rhinestones, but by reluctance. Elvis was once the embodiment of spectacle. But in these final years, as his health waned and his soul searched for rest, even the sparkle of the stage began to feel like a burden. These costumes, flashy and theatrical, no longer fit the man inside, not just physically, but spiritually. What stood out was how deliberate the rejections were. These weren't forgotten outfits. They were consciously shelved, preserved as artifacts of an identity Elvis no longer wanted to carry. It wasn't vanity. It was vulnerability. And in these choices, we begin to see a star dimming the lights himself, in search of peace. Elvis's letters to his mother, years after her death. Inside a faded leather satchel, a quiet heartbreak waited to be discovered. It was a bundle of handwritten letters, each addressed to Mama, Elvis's mother, Gladys Presley, who had died in 1958. What stunned everyone wasn't just that he'd kept writing to her, but that the letters continued well into the 1970s, years after her passing. The grief hadn't aged, it had only deepened. In one note, he wrote, "I still hear you in the quiet. Still need you, Mama." In another, "The crowds don't cheer like you used to." They were raw, uncensored, and filled with a longing that fame couldn't erase. Elvis had always been known for his close bond with Gladys, but the world never knew how deeply her death haunted him. These letters revealed a man stuck in spiritual limbo, searching the heavens for her voice in the middle of stage lights and hotel suites. The attic had already given us musical treasures and emotional fragments. But this was a window into Elvis's eternal wound. His mother wasn't just gone. She was a ghost he invited in, night after night, hoping she'd bring him clarity or at least a little comfort. Financial ledgers, hidden from the public. If the world saw Elvis as a careless spender, giving away cars, jewelry, and houses like candy, his attic ledger told a different story. Hidden inside a wooden chest were handwritten financial records, meticulously kept by the king himself. Each page was filled with entries that reflected generosity, not recklessness. One noted, "Gave $15K to housekeeper's family. Don't forget." Another tallied dozens of car giveaways, many to strangers or fans in need. He tracked every dollar he donated to churches, charities, and individuals who'd crossed his path. This wasn't a man obsessed with wealth. It was a man trying to make meaning through giving. In the margins, Elvis often wrote small reminders. "Call Mrs. P about the rent," "Pastor needs help," or "Don't let anyone go without." His spending wasn't lavish. It was deeply emotional, an attempt to fill the holes left by loss and loneliness. These ledgers rewrote the myth. Elvis wasn't a man undone by excess. He was a man trying to give his way out of emptiness. Elvis's annotated Bible. Amid the archives, preservationists found a large, worn Bible. Its cover cracked with time, the pages stiff with age, but the margins? They were alive. Every few verses were marked, underlined, or notated. In one passage, Elvis had scrawled, "Hope lives here." In another, "Am I forgiven?" His handwritten notes revealed a man wrestling with redemption, not just reading scripture, but interrogating it. This wasn't the Elvis of sequins and screaming fans. This was a son of the South, a spiritual seeker, grappling with guilt, loss, and longing. He had highlighted the parable of the prodigal son multiple times. One verse bore a tear stain, uncertain whether it was water, age, or something more sacred. Elvis's faith wasn't a performance. It was a private sanctuary, one he entered with trembling hands. And while the world saw the sinner, the attic showed us the soul. Fan letters he kept private. In a dusty cabinet beside the far wall, they found them. Thousands of fan letters, yellowed with time, but brimming with passion, grief, and gratitude. These weren't just autograph requests. They were confessions, sometimes cries for help. One read, "My husband died in Vietnam. Your music is all that keeps me going." Another, "I'm 16, pregnant, and scared. Your voice makes me feel safe." And Elvis kept them all. In some cases, he even responded. Archivists discovered handwritten replies in his unmistakable cursive, short but warm. "Stay strong," he wrote to a veteran's widow. "You matter," to a teen fan in crisis. He never publicized these exchanges. He didn't need to, because to Elvis, these weren't fans. They were fellow travelers, and in their words, he found purpose beyond the stage. These letters weren't artifacts. They were conversations, unfinished ones, that proved Elvis was listening, even when the world thought he was drifting. A forgotten home videotape. At the back of a dusty cabinet, nearly swallowed by time, preservationists discovered what looked like a forgotten relic of the VHS era. A camcorder tape labeled in blue ink. Christmas '73. No fanfare, no elaborate case. Just an ordinary-looking tape that would go on to reveal something extraordinary. When the footage rolled, the room fell silent. On the screen appeared a version of Elvis Presley the world had rarely seen. Unfiltered, laughing, tender. There he was in a simple sweater, chasing Lisa Marie around a Christmas tree. Gifts strewn about the floor. No stage, no spotlight. Just a father soaking in the joy of a fleeting moment. Priscilla could be seen in the background, smiling, half watching as she chatted with a friend. Lisa Marie jumped into her father's arms, squealing with laughter. Elvis kissed her on the forehead and said, "You're the best gift I ever got." The contrast between this private Elvis and the public persona was staggering. In this quiet, flickering reel of home life, we saw the man beneath the myth. No rhinestones, no cheers, just a soft southern drawl, unguarded warmth, and a house filled with real love. This wasn't just a video. It was a memory frozen in time, rediscovered decades later. And in just a few minutes of grainy footage, it told more about Elvis's heart than hours of concerts ever could. Artwork and poems by Elvis. Not all of Elvis's creativity made it to the stage. Hidden in a box marked "Private, Do Not Toss," archivists found sketchbooks, torn notebook pages, and folded napkins, all containing drawings, musings, and handwritten poems in Elvis's unmistakable hand. The sketches ranged from abstract doodles to intricate line portraits of people, some recognizable, others imagined. In one corner, he had drawn a crown being crushed by a hand. Underneath it, he scrawled, "The price of gold is silence." But it was the poetry that truly stunned. One short verse read, "They cheer, I nod, they cry, I bow, but no one sees who I am now." Another, titled "The Weight of the Crown," explored the burden of fame, wore the crown, took the throne, built a kingdom, died alone. These weren't polished works. They were raw, personal, aching. Art not meant to impress, but to express. Elvis, known for electrifying crowds, turned inward in these pages, quietly grappling with mortality, legacy, and identity. These creations revealed that while his public voice sang for millions, his private voice was often speaking only to himself. Through art, he orbed space for reflection, sorrow, and truth. And in doing so, he left behind a treasure more intimate than any gold record. A locked box with a secret engagement ring. In the farthest corner of the attic, tucked behind vintage furniture and moldy newspapers, was a small velvet box sealed inside a shoebox. Alongside it was a folded note in Elvis's handwriting, "For Ginger, but not yet." Inside the box, a diamond engagement ring. It was instantly clear. This ring had never been revealed publicly. Not part of the estate, not mentioned in legal filings. And yet it confirmed what many had speculated for years. Elvis may have been planning to propose to Ginger Alden, his girlfriend at the time of his death. The ring itself was elegant, classic, but powerful. What made it unforgettable was the emotional weight it carried. Elvis wasn't just performing at the end. He was planning, dreaming, hoping. The note offered no explanation, just that short phrase. But not yet. Was he waiting for the right moment? For peace of mind? For a future he couldn't yet see? This discovery turned speculation into substance. It added a new layer to Elvis's final chapter, a glimpse of the love he was still capable of giving, even as the world thought he had nothing left. Preserved newspapers and clippings. Near the attic's exit sat a filing cabinet, rusted but locked. Once opened, it revealed neatly organized stacks of newspaper clippings, magazines, and tabloid covers, all about Elvis. From his first Sun Records performance to the Vegas years, he had saved it all. Some were marked with highlights or circled in pen. One 1973 tabloid headline, "Elvis Bloated and Broken," was scribbled over in red. Liar. Another article about Lisa Marie's birth had "My Best Day" written beside it. It wasn't vanity, it was vigilance. Elvis followed how the world perceived him, studied it, obsessed over it. These clippings weren't trophies, they were proof. Proof of how loved, how ridiculed, how misunderstood he truly was. These preserved pages reveal a man who watched his own myth unfold in real time. And perhaps, in saving them, he hoped one day someone would read between the lines. What this changes about Elvis forever. The attic of Graceland was never just a storage space. It was a vault of memory, sealed shut by grief, protected by silence, and long forgotten by time. For decades, the world passed by that upper floor, marveling at the music room, the jungle den, the gold records, and glittering jumpsuits. But what lay above it all, quietly waiting, was something much more human. It was a sanctuary. Now, with each letter read, each film reel restored, and every artifact held up to the light, we see a version of Elvis Presley that no museum glass case could ever contain. The revelations inside this attic don't offer scandal. They offer intimacy. They don't shake his legacy. They reshape it. What emerges isn't the image stamped on lunchboxes or plastered across album covers. It isn't the rebel in leather or the Vegas showman drowning in sequins. Instead, it's a man, wounded, sensitive, and fiercely loyal and relentlessly spiritual. We see Elvis as a grieving son, writing letters to a mother long gone. A conflicted soul, highlighting Bible verses with tears in the margins. A father cherishing his daughter's drawings more than platinum records. He was not a god among men. He was a man burdened by being made into a god. The world always told the story of Elvis as if it ended in decline. A king who lost his throne to excess, his body to indulgence, his spirit to fame. But the attic tells a different ending. It shows that even in his final days, he still hoped. He still loved. He still dreamed. He still believed there was something left to give, whether it was a proposal not yet made, a song not yet sung, or a letter not yet answered. These findings don't tarnish his legacy. They humanize it. They bring Elvis back down to earth, not to diminish his greatness, but to remind us that his greatness came not from perfection, but from pain, passion, and perseverance. And perhaps that is the most powerful change of all. Because now, when we speak of Elvis Presley, we won't only remember the king, we'll remember the man. And we'll know that somewhere in that grand house in Memphis, in a quiet attic no longer sealed, his truth was waiting to be heard. And now, the world is finally listening. The attic wasn't just a forgotten space. It was Elvis's final sanctuary. And what it held wasn't memorabilia. It was proof of a life deeply lived, deeply felt, and quietly mourned. Now that these truths have come to light, the king's legacy isn't just remembered, it's redefined, and it echoes louder than ever.